All right. Some people watch HGTV and they think it's all glitz and glamour to do a fixer-upper. Is it a fixer-upper or a fixer-downer? We're going to talk about that and more in today's episode.
The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
All right. Welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about fixer-uppers. We kind of get starry eyes together when we're like, hey, let's fix up a property and flip it. But is it really worth it? And as a fixer-upper, is it one of those things that you're getting in over your head? So we're going to talk about that, some real world experiences today, and shed some light on fixing up a property and flipping it or holding it. But before I get to that, I want to introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, Hammy the Rockberry, Melissa, Let's Go, Glasgow, Aspen the Ninja Gruen, and Shannon the Boss, Martin Martinez. My name is Ben the Bodacious Lyons, and I'm your host of The Den.
That's right. I got to sign on for that one.
I had to throw that in there.
Got to vote.
Yeah, we got to vote. Next time we need to have like a consensus. So, yeah. So I figured we'd have an episode today about fix and flips or fixer-uppers. And whether you're flipping it, buying it as a primary, I know you had talked about this in an episode, Aspen, about, buying, fixing it up, and then every 2 years selling the asset and moving on to the next one. That's a strategy that a lot of people use. And we want to dive into that a little bit because, several of us have done that and been down that road, and we want to shed some light on the pros and cons of fixing and flipping or a fixer-upper. Now, as I say that, I've had some memories over the years of Shannon the Boss, Martin Martinez, going down that road. Why don't you kick us off today and tell us about some of your experiences with the fixer-upper component?
Well, I'm not against it. And for the most part, I think that if you can do the work yourself, I think that you can build a lot of equity. I think it can be a really good thing. But I think a lot of times people get in over their head. They don't really know what goes into it. They don't really know how much it's going to take. And that can be problematic, even for someone who knows quite a bit about, handyman stuff, construction, houses in general. It can still be a little bit overwhelming. So I've had a couple of them that were good and a couple of them that were bad. For the most part, I think it's a great idea. I think if you can build some equity of your own in a home, that's the best thing you can do financially for yourself. But I also think you need to know your limits. I think that most people think it's going to be fun and they just want to paint and maybe hire someone to put in some carpet. It really is a lot of work.
You have to be self-aware when you do these things?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot that goes into it. And sometimes we don't think of all those components before we get started on them.
Well, shed some light on an example. Were you buying these for your personal properties, like your personal home, or was it an investment? Or
Yeah. So I've done a couple of properties that were my own that I've kept, not really flipped. I would say there's been 3 so far. The first one was a real learning experience, but luckily I had, a nephew, a brother, a stepdad. I had a lot of people that were very handy and could do a lot of good work for me. It took a long time and it was probably more than what I had expected, but it turned out great. I mean, I did really, really well on it by the time that I sold that house.
And that was your first home, right?
Yeah.
So it was your primary residence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was there for 5 years. So I built a lot of equity. It turned out to be really good. The second one was a lot easier because I was in a better financial position. I had more knowledge of what to do. And I actually still own that house. I've owned it for 19 years, but I ended up having it for a really long period of time and did most of the work in the first couple of years. And I would say I built a tremendous amount of equity in it. And it didn't turn out bad. I mean, it turned out to be good as well in the end. Also did a rental of ours, and that was a little harder. Me and my husband are both very busy. He works out of town 2 weeks out of every month. So not having a lot of help, I did hire, people for that one. And I just had handymen all over the place that weren't, not having it in your hands was not a good thing for me.
Especially if you're trying to save money.
Yeah.
And you're maybe going the handyman route versus, a full-blown licensed contractor that has a lot of, people that they have to support. So they're charging,
I was having him do a lot of things that I couldn't do myself. And the problem is that, it just sometimes wasn't getting done the way I wanted to, but I'm not opposed to hiring handymen and stuff. Now, then the last one that I'm actually living in right now that we've been working on, It actually went pretty smooth. We only had a couple of things, but I hired some good contractors that I was, that I could count on. And again, my husband is still working out of town. He still works 2 weeks every month out of town. So that leaves me doing a lot of the work, and I'm only one little girl. Not so much. Just a girl.
Yeah, but they do call you the boss. So you are the boss. Oh, I call you. I don't know what Nick calls you, but he better call you the boss too.
Right.
So. So let's go back to, because you have two different veins. You have a primary residence. You buy it, you put some energy into it, some money into it, you build in some equity, and then after a few years, you flip it. And in your example, your house that you have almost 19 years, beautiful little home. There's a tipping point, obviously, when you're going to flip something for an investment. Do you spend the extra money on those nice windows, or do you get the base windows? Do you fully remodel the kitchen, or do you put a painted coat on it? So there's a tipping point where you actually enjoy the property, right? You may not get dollar in, dollar out, but if you have it for 19 years, I
think those things are worth it if you're going to own the property for a while. If you're really just looking to flip it, then I think you should look more at what's cost effective.
Yeah. Now, Aspen, you've done several flips, and you've done them on your personal residence as well as investment properties. So talk to us a little bit, your personal residence. What kind of mentality do you take into maybe a longer term hold in that regard?
I was thinking I've done 5 in the last few years. My first house that we ever got, we actually got flipped. To the studs. And we did, really nice, but pretty standard. Most people would like it, just for sellability. The second house, we actually remodeled most of. Paul actually brought the buyers on that one. And we did that one more for stuff we liked. So we kind of did more like tile work. So like around our fireplace, we did like different tile, and then we did like a border with colorful tile. We redid a bathroom with like funky tile on the ground. So nothing like crazy. We did white cabinets, kind of kept everything else pretty white walls, gray floors, kind of what's popular right now for that price range. But we did do some stuff that was not for, redoing the sellability. And then we also redid the backyard, and my parents helped put in like a big climbing gym for the kids. We're not going to get that back, but it was really fun when the kids were little and while we were living there.
Yeah. So how long did you hold on to that second property?
3 years.
3 years. So you kind of knew going in, like, this is going to be more of a shorter term hold, maybe a few years. You're not going to hold on to it for 5 or 10 type of thing. And was that the big driver for the things that you were doing as far as improvements?
It needed it. The people that had built the house had actually lived there until we bought it. So everything was original. They had little dogs in the house. Nice house, really solidly built, but it needed to be redone. It kind of had a musk to it.
Smelled like mothballs a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. So we did have to redo all of that. And then even this house that we bought, it's not a flip in any sense of the word, but I still talked to my lender and I said, we're holding this probably 7-8 years. What's the best? How much should we put into it? How much should, so I talk to people even on houses we're not flipping. What's the best to put down? How much should we look into renovating? And then I know myself, like we're redoing the whole backyard right now. Backyard was beautiful before, but I am doing things that I think I'll be able to get most of the value back. Mm-hmm. But that's not the driving factor at all. I want to live in my backyard. So there is some like livability to it as well. Yeah, you want to enjoy the space while you're there, because you may be there another 5 years or maybe 3 years, or maybe next week. I got a listing that you may. Yeah, don't tell Bryson. We want Bryson. If you're watching, it's not my fault. So, I think that's a good point, because you do have that tipping point where you're going to put all this money into it, but you could enjoy it as well. That there's a certain threshold you're not going to get that money back out. And that does play a factor. And just for the audience, as you know, if you hold on to a primary residence, you live in it 2 out of 5 years. And I have to say, I'm not an accountant, so always check with your accountant and bookkeeper. But if you're in a property for 2 out of 5 years, you call that your primary residence, any money that you make on that up to a certain threshold, now most people aren't going to reach that threshold, whether you're single or married, there's different levels, should be tax-free. So you can roll that into the next purchase of your next primary home. Now, again, look into those rules,
But for the vast majority of people, that's how it works. And Melissa, you actually upgraded this last year, your home as well. And you had a very nice little home in the center of town, and you ended up buying a newer property. Talk to us about the process there and your thoughts on your personal home and the upgrade component.
One thing that, I just always disclose, I am not handy at all. So everything that I did, I had to hire out. But my home that I had was fine the way it was, but I wanted the extra things. I wanted that pride and ownership. Like Aspen was saying, updating it, getting, traces of the previous owners out and me in there. The things that I did, I knew I was going to be getting a return on investment as far as, the water heater, sewer lines.
Yeah.
None of that's really good.
None of that's sexy, but yeah. You got to do it.
Yeah. And all just keeping things, clean and maintained as far as, your exterior, your landscaping, stuff like that. I think that all does bring, money to the closing table for sure. But what I really like and what I want to definitely learn how to do is more of the cosmetic things, because you're right. We do love watching the HGTVs, the TikToks, the Instagrams of these people that go and they'll redo a whole bathroom. And of course, it seems like, an hour or whatever, but it's weeks.
Yeah, weeks.
Who knows how long it actually is.
Yeah, you watch it in like,
yeah. I would like to get more adventurous into doing those things. So with my new home, I can't picture it yet because it's newer. It's not built in the 60s. So it's harder for me to envision some of the newer things to do in there. But I think it's a fun thing to actually enjoy your home if it's your primary residence. If it's something that you're picking up to literally flip and resell or flip and use as an investment property for a rental or something like that, then I think you have to keep more in mind of not necessarily your personal tastes, but like a general, you don't want to make it too quirky because that's going to turn buyers away.
Yeah. Quirkiness kills. Yeah.
But if you're living in it, go all out. Be a maximalist.
Yeah.
You want a hot pink wall? Do it.
Yeah. Enjoy it. Right. Yeah. Well, and you made an interesting point, Aspen, about you're in the business. You're obviously a very successful realtor, but you're still asking. You were asking your mortgage broker. You were asking other people, like, what are your thoughts here? So it's not like you just go into it without putting some thought into where you're going to put your money into the home, where you're going to be the fixer part, right?
Yeah, no, I price out everything and then I add 25 to 50% depending on what it is. If I know I'm going to be redoing something like a kitchen or a bathroom, I'm adding on 50% because you don't know if you're going to run into mold. Yeah. You don't know if you're going to run into a huge issue or maybe the pipes are old behind the wall and you have to redo all of them. Mm-hmm. If I'm doing a cosmetic, like just paint, flooring, I still will add about 25% because you don't know if you're going to pull up the carpet and there's asbestos tiles underneath. You just don't know what you're going to run into. So I have a pretty big buffer, which I don't think is for everybody, but it makes it very safe for me because especially when I was first starting, I did not have the cash to lose. So I tried to be very, very careful with what I was doing, and knock on wood, I haven't had any flops yet. I'm sure it will happen eventually as I'm getting more, adventurous with what I'm buying, but I definitely lean towards the safe things with a big buffer.
Yeah. And you were seeking opinions of others, even though you're in the business.
Yeah.
And that just is a testament to getting with a good realtor and asking questions because they can be someone that is a soundboard for you. And I just always, when people go, it's not quite ready yet for you to come, I'm like, no, I want to come right now before you do these other things so I can help guide on things that you're going to get value out of and whatnot. Personal residence is very different than doing a fix and flip type of thing. So we're still kind of in the personal property vein in that regard. In fact, I just saw a short the other day, and this lady talked her husband into buying like a 150-year-old like schoolhouse, and it was an all bricks. You would have loved this.
I'm sure it would have.
All brick, and she like basically gutted. They took all the way to the studs in the ceiling. She added like 12 skylights, and then it's just like this gorgeous like mix of old with some contemporary things. And then she's the plant lady, so she's got like hanging plants everywhere, and the snake plants under the stairs. It was really cool. I'm like, ooh, that's cool. This is dangerous because people see this and they're like, oh, it's easy. Mm-hmm. It's easy, right, Paul?
Do that.
So so Paul and I, we have a joke that, when we close with people and they're going to do something, we just say, call us on demo day, but don't call us after that. But we can take it apart, right? But putting it back together is a different ballgame. Paul, talk to us about a fixer in your personal life. As you actually upgraded this 2 years ago now.
And we did it wrong. We thought, so we were in our house that we bought for overpriced at the time in 2005, and we're broke. We were broke. We didn't fix anything the whole time we were there. And then when we finally were doing okay, we decided maybe we're going to sell this. And selling it didn't work because you can't do a real estate contract on a VA loan. I found that out pretty quick. We had to do a roof. We had to do a back porch. We had to do all new flooring. We had,
you remodeled your kitchen. Yeah.
A kitchen. We didn't get to the bathrooms. We should have, but we didn't. As soon as we were done with that, about a week later, we moved out. We put all that money into it. The flooring and the kitchen, we got to enjoy for maybe a year or two. And then the roof and the back porch and the yard that we had been working on and the new fence we put up, all of that. And then we move.
How many times have we heard that over the years? Like, I got it exactly where I want it. Mm-hmm. It's time to move.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that movie, The Money Pit. Remember The Money Pit?
Yeah. And then as soon as you're done one project, you go, now on to the next project. Yeah. So as soon as we got any money, we were putting it into the house, but we weren't thinking about it. And it was, we way overdid it because now it's a rental. Yeah. But our kids are, we've got 2 in middle school, 1 in high school, and it's small and 1,000 square feet with 3 dogs. And we keep saying yes to taking in dogs.
Yeah. Well, so you weren't as strategic because you weren't thinking along those lines. And that's where, for our audience, we should be saying, even in your current home, you think you may not be moving, still think about these things because the reality is you're going to move at some point.
Exactly. Because we thought we were going to retire there. Michelle and my wife and I had a bunch of talks about just staying in that house because we loved it. It fit. It was, it was like your favorite pair of pants or something like that. It just fit right.
Yeah.
And
then skinny jeans come on.
And then we got an opportunity that we couldn't say no to. And now somebody else is enjoying all of our hard work.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I would say this, I don't know of a contractor that takes payment plans. So if you don't have the money and 50%, because everything goes long on time frames, on cost. We went through in the pandemic when a 2x4 turns into $50.
Yeah.
So you have no idea what the expenses are going to be. If you don't have the money up front, don't even try it. Mm-hmm. Don't start it yourself and then call somebody in because then it costs twice as much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is you don't want to, Shannon started the podcast and be self-aware, right? We have a lot of people that go, oh, I can totally do that. I can totally do that. And then they get into it. Maybe they're too busy in their schedule or they really don't know how to do that right. And then you're dealing with it down the road. Like, oh my gosh, who did this?
Right.
How many times have we seen that over the years? We're like, holy cow. So they did an addition. Yeah. But you're going to need to tear it down because it just doesn't comply with code and they didn't pull the proper permits and things like that. Becoming self-aware through that process.
Let's not talk about my current listing.
So I can't help that, Paul. I try, it's okay.
I got to say no sometimes.
That's it. So to kind of wrap this up, if you are going into a fixer upper, right? How do we stay away from making it a fixer downer? What would be like a couple of the key components, 2 main ideas? In fact, go ahead, Paul.
I would say this. If you have to ask, is this a retaining wall? Back away.
Yeah.
You should not be doing this.
Yeah.
Because you don't have the HGTV budgets and contractors are going to go, well, the roof goes this way, so you should be good. And then you start doing it and things fall apart.
Yeah. And a lot of people walk in there like, I can just blow this wall out and, we'll open up this space. And that's all great. Conceptually, that's wonderful, but you may be dealing with a load-bearing wall. And a lot of people don't understand what goes into a load-bearing wall. And it's exactly what it means. It's bearing the load of your roof. And you can't just open it up, right? So there's a lot of things to consider. So I'm going to go to the speed round here real quick. And we're going to dive into this. And Paul, I'm going to ask you straight up, what are the 2 things you should be thinking about if you're getting into a fixer-upper as a buyer? What are the 2 hit things that you should be saying? First and foremost, do I have X and Y in play before I move forward?
X is the budget to do your project, and the Y would be, will the home be worth what you think it will when you're done?
Excellent point. Yeah. So do you have the budget, and is it going to be worth it at the end of it? Now, we're talking specifically primary residence at this point. Melissa, top 2 things you should be thinking about if you're going to.
What are my skill sets?
Okay.
Which leads into how much money do I have to do this?
Yep.
Because if I have to hire out every single project, that's going to cost a lot more money than if I can figure out how to do certain things. So that's what I would say.
Great point. Aspen, what are your top 2?
I think you need to be very self-aware, like Shannon was saying, and you need to really think if you can do it and can afford it. But I'm going to kind of just put in here, I would not be where I am today if I didn't take risks with fixing stuff up. And granted, my parents flipped houses, so I kind of knew a little bit on that side. And I had a lot of people I could ask questions to, and my husband did do construction, so he could do a lot of the things. But I think it's one of the fastest ways to grow wealth. As long as you don't go in looking at a wall being like, oh, I'll just take this wall out, and I just don't assume you can do anything. Unless you have endless pockets, don't assume you can do anything. I would say that's probably my second one. You need to ask the right people, the right questions, and price everything out correctly. I think otherwise you're going to get in trouble. But if you're doing it yourself and you have 3 years living in the house and you just want to do a bathroom over 3-4 weeks, there's no timeline. No one says you have to get it done in a week. If you have 2 bathrooms, use the other one and learn. You're going to figure it out. Don't go maybe yanking out electrical and plumbing, but the face stuff, you can figure it out.
I was just going to say, also don't assume you can't learn how to do
exactly.
something.
You can figure it out.
You can figure it out.
I can't tell you how much we have done from my husband. Anytime we want to do something, he says, let me just watch YouTube really quick. And he'll watch a few videos and he'll say, you know what? I think I got it figured out. And it's amazing how much stuff we can get done.
I learned basic electrical work from YouTube.
Yeah.
I have a really good friend who said, go buy a piece of drywall and practice.
Right.
That's a great advice.
Thought of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Great advice. Well, and I think that's an excellent point. Like, we're always like raising the flag, be careful. But to your point, Aspen, like, you don't risk versus reward. And especially in this game, you have to take a risk at some point. And it's all part of the learning process. Like, if you don't go through that process and you have the stumbles up front, you can never get to that next step or the step after that. So you have to take a risk at some point. And that just involves rolling your sleeves up and crashing crashing something through your wall for a safe. I mean,
sometimes
it happens. I was trying to stay. I couldn't help it. No, I mean, we don't want to get into that conversation, but it happens. So,
it's too fresh. We're not talking about it.
But that makes it fun, right? And you can look back, as long as you can look back and laugh and go, hey, I learned something. We didn't completely go bankrupt. You may not make as much money, or you may not make any money, fall flat on your face, but you got out of it and you learned something. Well worth it. Worth it. And if you're doing investment properties, just keep in mind, I agree with all of you, have a strategy, be self-aware, and understand, your limits. And if you understand your limits and you're able to, adjust accordingly, you have a budget behind you that makes sense. So a lot of people just they get starry-eyed and be like, I can totally do this. And that's where we go, ooh, just be real careful. Of course, you want a good realtor to navigate the process.
Right.
I would say too, before you start spending money, or even worse, start doing any demo work, have a plan. Like, if this comes up, this is what we're going to do. Like, we're going to start here and move here, instead of just, I've seen a lot of people just go, we're just tearing the whole thing down.
Then we'll figure it out.
Then we'll figure it out
from there.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll show up with a sledgehammer for some pizza any day of the week. People but it'll be a one-day deal for me. Yeah. After that, we're, you're on your own.
I like the demo, not the
tell me which wall to hit.
Yeah, we'll hit that. We'll hit that together. So thank you. Great discussion on that. I really hope that shed some light for our viewers on what to be thinking about, because I think we should all be in the fixer-upper game, not the fixer-downer game. And especially if it's your primary residence, understand your plan to stay in your home for 30 years is very unlikely to happen. You will eventually sell that property, or you'll turn it into a rental. So put some foresight into your strategy there. Wrapping that component up, onto the favorite part of the podcast in my eyes, which is the Lyons Pride. So as Lyons Group members, we all dedicate our time to making our community better here locally. We do what we can to get involved with nonprofits. We serve our community, our peers. We reach out and try to make the area we live better. And so we like to highlight those individuals that do the same. And this is an opportunity to highlight someone in our community. In fact, I'm going to highlight a family, which is a little bit different. Usually we do an event, a place, a single person, a family this time around. And I would like to acknowledge the Penningtons. How many of you all know the Penningtons?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we all do. They're a fantastic family. We've got Matt and Dalee Pennington, and we have Jesse and Grant Pennington. We have Mom and Dad Pennington. Their names escape me off the top, but they've since removed from the business, but they own the farmer markets in Bloomfield and in Flora Vista. Not only that, they own Empire Athletics, which is a great athletic center here in the heart of Farmington. And they're just a wonderful family. Like they just give back constantly. They do stuff for schools that you never see. They don't go out and wave the flag like, look at me, but they're always giving to our children. They're always creating spaces for our kids to thrive. And as we talked about in some of the best parts of living in the Southwest, this community is wonderful. So Pennington family, if you're listening to this podcast, please know that as the Lyons Group, we see you, we recognize you. We want to thank you for all the work you do in our local community. Continue doing what you're doing. It's doing great things. And welcome to the Lyons Pride. So glad we got through that one. That's fantastic. The Penningtons are wonderful. Our next episode, what are we going to be talking about the next episode? Paul, did you come up with something?
No.
Oh, okay. Negotiations. So next episode, we're going to be talking about negotiation secrets. And you're going to want to listen to that because we're going to give you we're not going to give you everything, but we'll give you a little inside glimpse into how we negotiate, how we set the stage to get you the best deal as a buyer or the best price as a seller. So we'll be talking about that on the next episode. If you want to schedule a consultation with any one of us here at the Lyons Group, go to sjcbroker.com. Follow our YouTube channel, our TikTok, our Instagram, our Facebook. Always has constant updates on what we're doing. Just get in the vein with the Lyons Group. You won't regret it. We're always bringing you timely deals, great information that can help impact your journey through home ownership. So hopefully you'll join us on next episode. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of The Den.
Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.